Welcome to Move for a Movement and Free Food for Thought walk and talk conversation. Due to unforeseen technical difficulties, we're having to record this conversation. And again, Free Food for Thought, thank you for joining us on this talk.
Yeah, thank you. We're excited to be here. And we're excited to talk about social justice. But I just wanted to start off asking just everybody, like, how do you define social justice? What do you define social justice as?
Hmm. Um, that's a fantastic question because I've never thought about it. Because I feel as though social justice is more of like a feeling to me rather than like a written out definition. As in, I can see examples of it, like progressive things or activism. Those are things that I define as social justice. I've never thought of like an actual separated definition of social means this and justice means this and combined they mean this. So yes, I define social justice as things that are like activism, spreading word, positive change, and things that impact people's lives in a monumentous positive way.
For me, I can define it more concretely. I feel like justice is it's like a type of distribution of privileges within society. So while activism and things like that can go into it, I feel like it's more of like from an equity and equality standpoint. That's how I think of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important. And you brought up like equity and equality. And I feel like when I think about social justice, I think about social justice is what leads to equity and equality. Like it is the actions that get us to equity and equality, whether it's racial equity or economic or whatever it is. And there's just so many different like aspects of social justice. Um, so yeah, I think those are really, really important. When were y'all first introduced to this concept of social justice? I have a very specific time in mind when I was introduced, but I'm just curious about y'all when y'all were introduced to the concepts of social justice.
I love this question in a way because it reminds me of like my activism anniversary when I started caring about these things. Also, I'm Lisa, by the way.
Oh yeah, we didn't even introduce ourselves.
Can we quickly go around and do a round of introductions?
Yes, absolutely. So, my name is Rebecca Harkless, pronouns she, her, hers, and I am the coordinator of social justice education, which means I'm also the advisor for Free Food for Thought.
I'm Khadijah Sek. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a facilitator with Free Food for Thought.
I am Lisa Thomas. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am also a facilitator for Free Food for Thought.
Yeah, so now everyone knows us. But what were you saying, Lisa, about
Oh,
social
yeah.
justice?
I love this question because it reminds me of my anniversary of activism. Because before I was introduced to social justice, I would say the big change was the 2016 presidential election. Because I would say I didn't care about politics, I didn't understand them, so this wasn't really my conversation. But I feel as though that election put a lot of people into the conversation that were very unqualified to talk about politics. And I realized if someone could run on a complete platform and they are 100% uneducated on politics, what stops me from engaging with politics? And I was completely blindsided by the winner of that election. So that is what really sparked something in me as well. Because I thought people could see what I could see, as in what's wrong with that platform that the person who won the election was standing on. But people couldn't see those things. So I chalked that up to like misinformation and how it became something that I'm very passionate about and something that I think I can make a change in.
Nice. The 2016 election changed a lot of things.
For me personally, it was around early high school. I was kind of looking into more African type of artists and comedians and stuff. And I came across Trevor Noah, who runs The Daily Show. And I started watching his videos, and I remember one night I binged everything. And everything he would talk about, I'd like look it up, I'd go to like sources, and it just kind of developed over time. And all of a sudden, like by the end of high school, I was like this huge like social justice warrior or whatever. So I would say it stemmed from him and Colbert also.
Very nice. I love Trevor Noah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that like I feel like y'all have some very like specific moments that of like social justice, and I feel like I kind of stumbled into it, which is kind of weird because like that is what my career has existed on, is like social justice and social justice education. But I distinctly remember looking at a reference when I graduated from college. I was an AmeriCorps member, and I remember after I became a staff member at the organization, I was looking at the reference that one of my professors wrote for me and talked about my social justice work and how like committed to social justice I was on campus. And I was like, wait, what? Like never in my mind did I consider the things that I was doing social justice work. Like I was advocating for Black students on campus because I was a Black student on campus. I was participating in these mentor programs because that's what I was passionate about. And I was having these like dialogues and like helping organizations put on these dialogues about social justice issues because it was what was interesting to me. And I never really considered that that was social justice, but like seeing those words in that letter of recommendation was like, oh, okay, maybe I didn't stumble in. I mean, like I did stumble into this, but I've been doing this work for a while. And I just never defined it as social justice work for some strange reason. So yeah. So like I said earlier, like when I was in college, I was doing the things that I was passionate about just personally. What are some of y'all's social justice passions?
Yay. I love talking about my social justice passions. I think mine are things that are related to me. Like right now, the thing I'm most passionate about is Black women's treatment in healthcare. Because as a Black woman, that's something that's very concerning to me, like the mortality rate for Black women during childbirth. And when you look at the numbers, it's terrifying. So that is something that I am very passionate about and love to talk about because I still have a little bit of hope left in human faith that the reason that people believe what they believe is because they're just ill informed on real issues. That's very optimistic of me, but it's something that I feel like is curable and tangible. Like I can change the world if I educate people on these things.
Yeah, for me, it kind of relates to me. Like Liza was saying, I have two main things I'm really passionate about. The first thing is religious rights, particularly for Muslims, because I am Muslim. And I mean, Islamophobia is so rampant right now. It's really terrifying. And it's just something that I don't know if it's something we can fix in the near future, honestly, at this point, but it's something that I'm like willing to dedicate my life to fighting. Also with ageism, for some reason, because it doesn't relate to me, obviously, but it's like a huge thing for me. I get really upset sometimes when I hear certain things, like for example, when an old person forgets something, you know, people are like, oh, like senior moment or whatever, and like they don't realize how ageist that sounds. And also, like a lot of marketing and like just with public things is geared towards people younger than 50, which I think is crazy because it basically gives the impression that once you get past a certain age, you're no longer cared for, valued in society. Like they don't even market things to you anymore. Things like that, I'm really passionate about. So
yeah, that's so interesting. So like some of y'all's social justice passions are related to your identity and some of them are not. And I think that's real. I think like, you know, to be able to fight for your own self is one thing, but then to also be able to fight for the rights of other people is also another thing. So yeah, I had a question for you, Khadijah. You talked about like Islamophobia and like sometimes feeling that it is like you don't know how to end it, like it's just like running rampant or whatever. Like how do you in social justice, how do you combat like feeling like all of these injustices are too overwhelming?
That's a good question. I find myself having to give myself breaks sometimes and telling myself that it's okay. Like last night, for example, I was like, you know how you're like on your phone at night. I don't know if you have great sleep hygiene, but I don't. I'll just lay on my phone. Yeah. And I'll be, you know, going to sleep, but then I'm like, okay, let me scroll through Instagram for 5 minutes. And my Explore page is usually full of like social justice things, especially as it relates to Muslim rights, because that's usually the type of stuff that I like and the tags I follow. And I just found myself skipping over lots of them. And I was just going to like funny tweets and stuff like that. I just could not handle it at that moment because I'm like really tired and I'm like, do I have the mental capacity to sit here and read this thread about this Native American woman who died in a hospital because of like terrible service, or like this Muslim woman who got her hijab ripped off? Like, do I have that? And, you know, I just like to remind myself that it's fine if you don't, because at the end of the day, I am a person and I don't really believe that Islamophobia is something you can cure overnight. Any type of bigotry, honestly, is not. It's a constant fight. And it's like running a marathon. Like you don't sprint the whole way through. You take laps and you jog. So
yeah, I think that's really important to remember and something that I have to remind myself all the time, because the Instagram algorithm will get you. Like they know what you want to see, and sometimes they will repeat your trauma over and over again. So I think that's super important, especially to bring up in this conversation when we're talking about like social justice, but in the context of this Move for a Movement idea of like integrating social justice and movement and physical health. And I think the mental health of like being someone that is involved in social justice is oftentimes ignored, or we just feel like we have to be doing the most all the time because our liberation or the oppression of other people count on it. So I think that's super important, and I'm glad you brought that up. So Khadijah, I know you are from Tuscaloosa, so just down the road, but you've been in Birmingham and you go to UAB, and so both of y'all go to UAB and you've been in Birmingham, and there's this legacy of civil rights within the Birmingham community, and it's been the epicenter, and we have the beautiful Civil Rights Institute that memorializes the movement. Have y'all been to any of these landmarks in Birmingham? Have you been able to visit?
Yes, because my freshman year, I went with BSAC to the Civil Rights Museum, and that was my first time ever really going to a museum like that as a freshman in college, which is mind-boggling. And it's, when I think about it, being in Birmingham, I feel as though we can get desensitized to things when it comes to issues such as social justice and people so desperate to get to a post-racial society that they are willing to ignore racism that we see every day. So it's because I was thinking about this the other day, how we learn about African Americans' enslavement in third grade. I think that's way too young for an 8-year-old to learn that kind of thing. To the point, I think it's just desensitized us, and we just get to a point where we're like, oh, this happened and it's okay, when it can never ever be okay. And that's where people can just tell us to, it happened a long time ago, so it's fine. But it is really never going to be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. For me, I haven't been to any in Birmingham, but my parents took me in elementary school. I can't remember how old I was, but I was young, and I remember being very. I didn't want to be there, and it showed. Like I was like, okay, can we go? Like, okay, because I think we went to, was it Memphis or Atlanta? It was somewhere like that, and we saw like MLK's grave and all that. Like we like did the whole like civil rights road trip thing, and I just did not want any part of it. And my parents afterward, like they scolded me. They were like we came all this way to show you this. Like why aren't you engaging? And I think it was just because it was one of those things, like Liza said, that I learned about it, you know, in grade school, and I just it was so like disgusting to me that I just blocked it off. I was just like, okay, that's something that happened a long time ago. It's fine. Da, da, da. Like I just couldn't believe it personally. And so to be confronted with that, for my parents to take me and all that, I just wasn't ready to hear it. Like that it was a actual real thing. And I haven't been back since then. I'm still kind of like weird about it. Like in Senegal, which is where I'm from, there is an island where they used to take these slaves, and there's it's like a mansion-ish, but there's like it's where they would keep the slaves. And so you can go in through there and see the rooms they used to stay in and stuff, and obviously horrible, horrible conditions. Um, and the very first time I went there, because there's a beach nearby, I was like ruining the mood of the tour because I kept asking my parents when we can go to the beach. Like, kept just being like, no, it's fine. It happened a while ago. We're good. Everything's all right. And even to this day, I still feel the same weirdness when I'm confronted with it.
Yeah, I think y'all bring up some really good points. I think that there's something unique happening in America or that something unique happening in America where we need to face our history, and we need to confront it, but also we have to recognize that history is traumatizing to Black folks, and that it does not have the same effect on all of us. And so that there is a way for us to recognize our history, and honor those who have gone before us, but also recognizing that we still carry those legacies in our bodies today, and that we still see the effects of enslavement today. And so just thinking about that and thinking about like, what is the future for social justice? What do y'all think about like what has happened since this summer, or and what needs to happen going forward?
This summer, I believe that we saw social justice become socially acceptable to the point where companies were comfortable coming out and saying we support this, and people who aren't part of the community being oppressed coming out and saying we support this. And it was so shocking to me, honestly, because this group, I've been saying this stuff for years. Like, this stuff is wrong for years, but this is like the first time it's hit mainstream. And when it does this, it irritates me to no end because I know nothing's going to change in a way. So I doubt the authenticity of these companies saying Black Lives Matter, or the white people saying I understand that I can never understand. So whenever that happens, I'm like, that's where I feel as though I have to step away, because that's the point where I feel the most overwhelmed. Like the everyday pressures of social justice and being an activist, I can handle that. But when it's collective performative activism, that is what just puts me into a situation where I'm like, this is so toxic. I think that's the most toxic thing ever because it's basically promising something because we want to see immediate results. We want this kind of treatment to end immediately because we've been suffering it for years. So it's promising us that they're listening, but they're not going to do anything about it. And I think it's just disgusting.
I think that going off Liza's point, that I personally think it was more productive than it could have ended up as. There was definitely lots of performative activism going on, but I think it's important to remember that at the end of the day, the people who are being oppressed are not going to be able to overthrow the oppressors. You have to have allies. It's very, very important. And also, Liza mentioned that we have been suffering for years and we do want immediate results, but I personally just don't think. Wait, is it Lisa or Liza?
Lisa.
Okay, I'm sorry. Whoops. But where was I? Yeah, so we want immediate results, but that's just not very possible. In my opinion, I feel like if the whole country is so trained to, behave a certain way, and all these people who are in power and have the privilege, they're still struggling with that fact, then I think it's going to take a long time because, like you said, we are still feeling the effects of enslavement, for example. And that's just not something that goes away over one summer. So I think that allies are super duper important. And I feel like this summer, it's more positive than negative. I feel like now that it's more socially acceptable to be supportive of certain movements and things, I think that's moving in a better direction than if it wasn't socially acceptable for that.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. And we need to welcome everybody into the social justice fight because, like you said, that it's hard for people that are in the oppressed categories to overthrow those who are in power. And so we need everybody to change these systems. And before we close, I want y'all to just talk about Free Food for Thought and like what do you all do, and invite any students that are listening to what Free Food for Thought has going on.
Okay, Free Food for Thought is an open discussion forum, which appealed to me in the first place because it's not an argument. Because arguments, we get heated and we stop listening, and then we're just trying to win. And arguments nowadays, it's just who's ever loudest or whoever comes with the best comeback, no matter how accurate it is. So Free Food for Thought, we get a dialogue, we give knowledge and we take knowledge and we get to learn. And I think this is the best stepping stool to the active part of the educational part of activism. The active part's important, but also the educational part, because you don't want to be out there acting not informed.
Yeah, and we have already had a session on So You Want to Talk About Activism. That was the title. And it was last week. But now we're having our next session on the 14th, and it's about moral obligation and what that is. It will be from 4:30 to 6:30. And yeah, there won't be any food
because COVID.
Yeah, but feel free to come anyway.
Yeah, and follow us on Instagram at UABFFFT, Free Food for Thought. So yeah, thank you, Khadijah and Lisa, for chatting with me this afternoon. It is afternoon. And I'll talk to y'all soon.
Great.
Thank you. Bye.